Hello and welcome everyone. I'm your host, Ali, co-founder of Node, the leading customer experience platform for chemicals and ingredients. Our goal with this series, as you know, is to share perspectives on the changing digital environment in our industry, and we have another amazing guest with us today. I'm thrilled to welcome Neville Prior, chairman of Cornelius Group, a UK-based European manufacturer and distributor of specialty chemicals and ingredients, primarily selling into the nutrition, care, and industrial markets. Neville, until last September, I believe, also served as a board member of the European Association of Chemical Distributors, FECC, for about 15 years. 10 of those as president of the association. And before that, he was president of the Chemical Business Association, and on and on and on. I mean, I could spend a couple hours going through your entire career. But maybe before we jump into today's conversation, Neville, is there anything you want to highlight about yourself or your background?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I could talk a little bit about how I got into this romantic industry called the chemical industry. For my early life, by early life I mean sort of 20s, I was actually an academic chemist. So I was an organometallic chemist in Cambridge in the UK, doing research and doing a bit of teaching and what have you. And it was the mid-80s. I was actually offered a position at MIT to set up a research group, and it was a great offer. I mean, fantastic, and that's what I was going to do. At the time that I was doing that, my father actually worked in a chemical business called Cornelius. And at that time, it was part of a bigger group. And there was the opportunity to have a management buyout of the distribution business. So I never actually got to MIT, completely changed career, stayed in the UK and got involved in the buyout of the business and came into the chemical distribution industry that way. So it was never an intention, you know, although I had a father that worked in the industry. It was always I was going to do something else, and it was always him saying, "You really should do something else." But there we are. So I ended up here.
Well, life would have been a little bit different if you would have moved to Boston, huh?
It absolutely would have been. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have had the two children that I have now and the wife that I have now. So yeah, that would have been different. I might have had a different accent by now, and would probably be able to take part in the next elections coming up in the United States. But no, I'm here. So there we go.
Lucky you. I actually didn't know that your father was part of the industry and part of Cornelius. So it's been
Yeah.
in the family for how long now?
Well, Cornelius was started by a man whose surname was Cornelius, and my father was one of the first people to join, and he joined in 1945, 46, I think. The business was set up originally in 1935. So, and in terms of it being a family business with the Priors, we've owned shares since, I say, the mid-80s when we went through this buyout.
So did you and your father actually work together at the company?
Now that's so the answer to that question is yes. But to expand on it, was it the most successful partnership? It's very difficult working with your father, particularly when you have quite different views on things. So we did work together for a few years. And we came to the conclusion that it either had to be him or me. So I'm still here.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I know what you mean about how difficult it can be to work with family.
Yeah.
But wow, okay. That's great insight. I did not know that. Your career did start quite a ways ago. Our research says Irish Dawn in 1994.
Oh my word. Gosh, Irish Dawn. that takes me back. So my career here actually started in about 1984.
Mhm.
1994, Irish Dawn. We were kind of thinking about how can we expand into other areas, and we'd always thought that food, nutrition, well-being would be an interesting area for us. So we went and acquired this business called Irish Dawn, and Irish Dawn made herbal teas,
Mm.
and they had a tea bag making facility, and and they had these various formulas for making these teas. And it was a very small business. So the lady who ran it, she was interesting to say the least. She was actually a practicing witch. So who knows what was in these herbal teas? But yeah, no, we bought that, and we very quickly realized actually we're a chemical business and we're not a tea bag maker, and we're not a retailer. And we disposed of that fairly quickly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I get the whole emphasis on nutrition and care, but you took it a little step further there.
Yeah, we did. So I think I was telling a group of our people today, I think history is fine as long as you learn from it. And that was a bit of history that we learned from.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Got it. Do you mind if we talk about FECC for a minute? I believe that's how we actually first met.
Yeah,
You were part of the board for quite some time.
I
I'm
was.
sure you've seen this association develop quite a bit over the years. What today is the main focus of the group?
Yeah, so I think FECC, as people may or may not know, is essentially the European association for the chemical distribution industry. So it's focused on chemical distribution, supply chains, that sort of thing. It's based in Brussels, and of course, if you're in the EU, a lot of the lawmaking, a lot of the ideas for laws and regulations is in Brussels. So that's why it's in Brussels and important to be there. So of course, one of the tasks of any association, and FECC is included in that, is um, to to be involved as much as one can in terms of the regulation that's going forward, to be a voice for the industry, um, uh, to encourage good regulation that's going to work for the industry, but also work for the rest of the community. So that's obviously quite a big role for something like FECC. But it's also I have this strong belief that, if you look at the chemical distribution industry as an industry, um, it's quite diverse. So you have a number of very big corporate players with lots of resource that have the capability and the wherewithal to think about the future, to think about strategies, to think about where the industry is going, where they want to take their business. Um, there's a big number of small and medium-sized companies that don't have that kind of resource, and frankly, don't have as much time to think about those sorts of things. So I have this sort of firm belief that somebody like an FECC uh, should be involved in a little bit of thought leadership,
Mhm.
looking at what are the trends that are coming in the industry, but also the peripheral to the industry, communities, what's happening in Europe as a whole, and try to lead its members at least to the conclusion that these are things I should be thinking about. So the other kind of things that it's involved with in that kind of term, I would say the important ones are around sustainability. Sustainability is something we hear all the time in the industry.
Yep.
It's frequently something that people think they should do something about, don't know what they should do about it, or even think, do you know what, it's going to be a cost, I can't. And so I think the duty there is to try and get into the minds of senior executives. Actually, this thing isn't going away. You look at the regulation in the EU in particular, it's becoming very heavily regulated. And you have to do something about it. Not only that, but consumers, you know, the people who would be buying largely from our customers, you're getting savvy, clever consumers who want to know that what they're buying is safe, that it's having a minimum effect on the environment. So sustainability is one part. There's the whole thing about how do you attract young talent into our industry. That's highly important. And of course, there's the topic that's dear to your heart, the whole digitalization thing, because the chemical industry typically is not an early is not a very early adopter of new technologies, tends to lag behind, and you know, there's a whole raft of things that are coming down the line in terms of technology, and the industry needs to be aware of it. So I would say the main things probably sustainability, digitalization, regulation, obviously, because that has big day-to-day effects, and trying to keep people connected.
Yeah.
I think that's important as well, because the kind of issues that the world is facing, and as an industry, we're part of that. You can't just solve them on your own. You have to be connected in some way. So it's being part of those connections, bringing people together to solve problems that are wide-ranging problems, and that are important to everybody.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of going to one of the events, FECC events. I think it was in Spain, like 6
Yeah,
or 7 months ago.
yeah,
And I can confirm that those 4 topics were the 4 topics of the entire couple-day session.
yeah,
And I agree with the last one in that, like, bringing all of those folks together to sort of learn from each other was probably the most powerful part of the entire couple
yeah,
days.
yeah,
Very, very meaningful.
yeah. No, I would agree. I would agree entirely. Uh, it's like all things, you know, words are easy to say. It's actually carrying out the actions that are a little more difficult. But you know, I do see that as a role for FECC going forward. I'm not the president. I'm not on the board anymore, so I can't force them to do that. But if anyone from FECC is listening, carry on with that good work.
Well, let's switch topics a little bit to the one that is near and dear to me, like you said, digital.
Yeah,
It, you know, from our perspective, the emphasis on this topic has grown dramatically over the past couple of years, especially in distribution.
yeah,
And not just from an ERP perspective and supply chain perspective, but from a customer-facing perspective. And how do you start to
yeah,
create new and different experiences that are maybe more responsive,
yeah,
maybe more self-serve, and that sort of thing.
yeah.
You know, what is, you know, maybe 1 or 2 opportunities that you see for Cornelius when it comes to digital?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I mean, I think there's lots of opportunities. That's for sure. So there's kind of the obvious ones where, you know, let's get my product list on a nice looking website or store or whatever you want to call it, and get that out there. So, you know, in a sense, that's expanding your brand, expanding your market, potential market. It probably links into improving customer experience. Um, you know, today we're all very used to picking up our mobile phone, going onto Amazon or eBay or any other retailer that has a good online presence, looking for a product, being able to read about it, understanding the product, buying it, and then they tell you it will be delivered on such and such a time. And as you go forward, they say, you know, your product's 5 stops away and your driver is Billy or Dave or whoever it might be. So there's that whole thing. And I think, so that links into the customer experience, really, and the customer's expected experience. And particularly as sort of the oldies like myself sort of shuffle off in terms of the industry and you get younger people coming in, they're expecting that sort of experience even more because that is their life. You know, I remember life before Amazon. A lot of the people that we have working for us now don't remember life before Amazon. They don't remember life before iPhones or any other kind of mobile device. So that's part of the expectation. So I think we have to provide an experience that, in a sense, matches people's day-to-day lives. So of course, digitalization, that's the only way you can do it. If you're looking to attract young talent into your organization, and, you know, let's face it, the chemical distribution industry is not what you would think of as the most romantic industry going. But you have to provide a workplace that people want to work in. I mean, frankly, if you want to have good talent, there has to be somewhere that they can go to that they want to work in. And it's not about money per se. But it's about the working conditions. It's about what are the attitudes to the environment of your company. Do you allow people in your company to be involved in environmental issues, sustainability issues? Do they have the kind of digitalization platforms that they want to be working with? So, you know, to me, there's a big advantage in being able to attract and retain young talent. And without young talent, no business has a future. You have to have young talent. That's just the end of the story. So so I think there's this whole thing about enhancing your market reach. I don't necessarily think it reduces the cost of acquiring customers. I think it adds to the ability to acquire customers. And I think we've talked a little bit about sustainability. You need sustainability in supply chains. You're then talking about connectivity, as we talked about FECC, bringing people together. Digital can bring people together. So I think there's a, you know, advantage is in using modern technologies to bring people closer together, to be able to communicate more quickly, more easily, and anywhere they want to communicate from. So I think this whole thing around supply chains, how it links into sustainability, I think digitalization is going to be one of the major tools for helping with that. But also, you know, we have to think about innovation, and people typically don't think of distributors as innovators. You know, distributors buy a product from a principal, they market the product, you know, that's what they do. But let's not forget, and I talk also, we're a manufacturer as well, so we do kind of proper R&D, but as a distributor, we also have laboratories where we're creating formulations. And, you know, I see things like artificial intelligence being able to help in creating innovative formulations, innovative solutions for customers. And that's equally as true in our manufacturing business. So, you know, I think the whole digitalization plugs into so many areas. And of course, the easy one is how do you automate processes in your own internal environment and drive efficiency in that way. So I sat there trying to think about this and how many things could I come up with that I thought were advantageous to be involved in digitalization, and I think that was pretty well the list that I had. So
You've covered, I think, all the key topics. I mean, look, from our perspective, the industry may still be a few years removed from being able to, see where Billy is and dropping off the drums.
yeah,
But I think the movement has certainly started, and folks have kind of built out their roadmaps and realized kind of the steps that need to take place in order to be able to enable those capabilities in the future.
yeah,
And we may still be 3 to 5 years behind being able to give the experience that you just mentioned, but people are pouring the foundation now. And the investments are happening and the
yeah,
hiring is happening and all of
yeah,
those sort of things in order to prepare because like you said, um, sometimes it can be hard to easily differentiate one distribution's capabilities from another. And
mm,
this is one of the key opportunities, which is, when you speak to principals and customers that, hey, we're doing this in this space that is unlike others.
yeah,
And we've certainly heard that story sing pretty loudly.
yeah, yeah. And I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, differentiation is a very difficult thing to do. It used to be when I first started, if you could deliver a product on time, you were different. Well, that that very quickly didn't become a differentiator. If you had your laboratories, your own laboratories, formulation laboratories, you were different. But everyone ends up catching up on those things. So then you're casting around. So how do I make myself different? I mean, at the end of the day, what you want is your customers to love you,
Yep.
to be a true partner with you. And anything you can do to enhance that relationship, I think is really important. And um, that's one of the positives I think of digitalization, that it will help create closer and closer bonds between customers and uh, distributors, and then up the chain through to principals.
Yep.
And then you have a very connected supply chain.
I mean, you certainly have gone as far as putting what you just said in writing. I was reading your website. I think it was your customer care commitments page, and front and center, we believe the customer experience is vital for our continued success.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, that's what it is.
yeah. Well, you don't have customers, you don't have a business.
Okay, let's maybe circle back a little bit. When you were first elected as VP of FECC in 10 years or so ago,
Yeah,
uh, there was quite a bit of economic uncertainty in Europe and around the world.
yeah,
Um, and we're certainly seeing that, all over again, and maybe not even maybe, definitely more so now than 10 years ago,
yeah,
given geopolitical and so on.
yeah.
Uh, I'd love to hear your advice to leadership as folks try to balance,
Hmm.
these short-term events and the investment that you should or shouldn't be doing during these
Yeah.
times of uncertainty. Um, how do you think about sort of balancing investment, short-term and long-term in these environments?
Yeah, uh, it 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 is a difficult thing. I mean, it is a difficult question, and it is about balance. Um, we all know. I think 2023 was an immensely difficult year, not just for the chemical distribution and chemical industry. It was an immensely difficult year for everybody. A lot of geopolitical events fed into that. Energy prices in Europe have rocketed, inflation has rocketed, interest rates therefore have rocketed. And everyone is sitting there in whatever economy they're in, with a whole bunch of consumers who are sitting on their hands saying, I'm really frightened to spend money.
Mhm.
So ultimately that feeds through to people like Cornelius. The market is very tough. Everyone's fighting as hard as they can. And you have no choice, but you have to look at those short-term things. So do you have cash? Are you motivating people in your business in a really tough time? Do you have too many people in your business? How are your costs? So you're having, you have no choice. You have to look at all those short-term things. I think the issue for me is you can get so ingrained in just looking at short-term things that you forget about the future. And none of us are in business to not have a future. So you've got to think of the future. As we talked about in terms of digitalization, it's a big part of the future. I mean, it absolutely is. It's strategic. I mean, there are other things that are a big part as well. As I said, sustainability, how do you attract young talent? All of these things are hugely important, and you have to carry on, at least to some extent, even if it isn't to the extent that you might have done in really good times, to ensure these things are going to have a place in your future. So you can't just say, I'm not going to do anything. I think you have to carry on doing stuff. I mean, I suppose in our own business, what we've been doing over the past few years anyway is trying to get the actual basics right, so that the exciting stuff can be added in onto solid foundations. And I think there will be a lot of businesses in our industry where they still need to get the basics right. And a lot of that is around, around people resource as well, not just spending capex and not just spending money, but it's around people resource as well. And I think, you can approach this as well by having cross-functional teams within your business being involved in these things. Actually, it's quite motivational for people to be involved in something that, on a day-to-day basis, they might think is someone else's department. If you're talking about digitalization, everyone will say that's the IT department. But actually, it's not. It's everybody, because everybody is affected by it. Everybody will be using it, and everybody will have a view on it. So I think when times are tough, obviously you have to make sure that your business is healthy and is going to continue and go forward. But don't forget about those strategic things. You have to do something around those as well.
Yeah. Everyone's kind of releasing their earnings reports for 2023 right now, and I've read more than you can imagine over the past, couple weeks.
Yeah,
And they all roughly say the same things. And everyone knows that there's, all the headwinds out there. But I really respect the executives, especially those that on the front sort of opening letter to their shareholders have continued to stress the importance of thinking long term, and that these cycles come and go, and yeah, the numbers are what they are, but like let's keep an eye on where we want to be in 3 to 5 to 7 years,
yeah,
because these times will shift. I mean, like we've you know I haven't been in the industry as long, but I've seen at least 3 significant dips in my career.
yeah.
Uh, and they'll continue. It'll happen again in 10, 12 years.
Of
and,
course it
and
will. It always does.
it always does. It always does. And we've got to, not be too short-term centric, like you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Last thing.
Yeah.
Any words of encouragement that you want to share with your employees at Cornelius, especially those that may be working on some business process improvements or digital initiatives, in
Yeah.
terms of just like your perspective on what they're up to, and yeah, just words of encouragement.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think, as I mentioned earlier, I've just had a day with our senior and middle leadership team setting the scene for 2024. And that's not because we're 2 months late. That's because our financial year has only just started. But and I think the kind of message that I gave to them first was, look, we had a bad 2023. We're not the only ones. So this isn't a Cornelius problem, but this is a problem for Cornelius. However, we did lots of good stuff, and let's not forget the good stuff. Keep that in your mind. The great, it's terrible to say, but the great thing about going through a tough year or tough few years, or however long it might be for whoever it is actually it makes you think about your business when times are good. And I think, you know, all people, all businesses are kind of fall into the trap. It's like you're sitting in your very comfortable chair at home in front of a log fire. You've got your slippers on, and you know it's really nice, and you sit there and you bask in it. You know what? When the fire goes out and it needs some new logs or whatever, you say, "Oh, I need to get up and I've got to do something because it's not going to be comfortable anymore." So the thing about having that tough year, and it's certainly something that we've done, is you look at your business and you look at it very closely and you say, actually, do we have the right structure? Are we doing the right things? Should we be doing things differently? And that's what we've done. And then you have a team in place, and and we're saying to them, you know, it has been tough. We're going forward. We have to look at the future. This is how we see the future, and together, as a team of people, that's what we're going to create. And actually, I think if you do that, you can energize people. They can get really excited. You know, they might not be getting a bonus, but they're really excited because they feel part of a team that's going to take something forward, that's a business that still has vision, that still has strategy, and that they're a big part of it. And people love being a part of something. So that's how we've seen it. And you know, technology has been a part of the discussions that we have had today, and you know, how are we going to take that forward? You know, it requires resource, it probably requires money, it requires all these things, but we need to take it forward, because to build a more efficient, to build a differentiated business from where we are now, you need these things. So
this conversation went a lot longer than they normally do.
okay.
And I really enjoyed just letting you have the floor for a while, because you know a lot of what you said is just very real and very timely. And I appreciate the simplicity of how you said it. And I love listening to an English accent. Um, I can speak for audience by saying that, you know, everyone loves these sort of informal conversations with folks that have been helping
Yeah.
shape our industry, and you're one of those folks. So, you know, thank you for the over 30 years that you've invested in trying to move this space forward. It's an absolute joy to see you. And, you know, I'm excited to see what Cornelius does next.
So am I. So am
Thank
I.
you.
Yes. No, thank you very much. Actually, it's as you probably gathered, I like the sound of my own voice. So but no, it's good, and I quite enjoy doing this sort of thing anyway. So thank you. Hope it goes down well.
Wonderful. Take care.
Anyway, and you take care.